Assalamu alaikum and good morning, dear audience and member of the press. I am Abu Ali, the Imam of Frederick Mosque, Islamic Society of Frederick. I'd like to share this with you that I am very much encouraged by the support of our President Barack Obama for the construction of the Islamic Center at Lower Manhattan. I would like to work with all other major faith communities in America, especially Christian and Jewish communities, and their leaders in this matter. By virtue of our Muslim faith and belief, we have a special relationship with our brothers and sisters of Christian and Jewish religion based upon our common root in Abrahamic faith. I again welcome the encouragement and support shown by our President for the Islamic Center project at the Lower Manhattan in New York. Now I yield my time to other respected and very distinguished speakers present here. Thank you very much for the time and opportunity I was given this morning to share my thoughts with you. Thank you, all of you.
Okay. And coming straight from Union Station, all the way from Philadelphia, certainly a champion of peace and a champion of working together across faith, ethnic, and all kinds of lines that often divide us in this society, is indeed Rabbi Waskow, Arthur Waskow of the Shalom Center in Philadelphia. Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you. And if you'll maybe pass these along. I thought it might make sense to have an actual paper version, even in the digital age, of some things I wanted to say. So first I want to recognize that this is in Muslim tradition, the holy month of Ramadan. In Jewish tradition, the holy month of Elul, which comes right before Rosh Hashanah. In both traditions, this lunar month, is a time for refocusing toward God, toward justice, toward peace, and it seems a good time to do that. I should begin perhaps by saying that I've known Imam Rauf and Daisy Khan, the organizers of the Cordoba Initiative and the initial planners for Park 51, the Muslim-rooted cultural center in Lower Manhattan. I've known them both for years and worked with them. And they have worked with others as well as me in the Jewish community of New York City. In fact, the leadership of New York Jewry was astonished and outraged at the attacks on the notion of the mosque, because people had worked out over months and months what this would mean. And indeed, the real estate developer who actually bought the land tried first to do it somewhat further north. So all these allegations about how this was a triumphalist attack on American society in honor of the attacks of 9/11 was just nonsense. And that real estate developer was trying to create what he had fallen in love with, the Jewish Community Center of the West Side and the 92nd Street Y, because he saw that rooted in a specific religious tradition was this outreach to the world. And that's what he wanted to create with a Muslim-rooted, outreaching to the world community center in Lower Manhattan. When I try to think about what it is, what are the teachings that I would draw on to understand how to respond to this, the first of those teachings is ancient. The great Rabbi Hillel, who interpreted the passage in the Hebrew scriptures in the Torah that says, love your neighbor as yourself. He said, well, what does that mean in practice? He said, it means don't do to your neighbor what you would find hateful if your neighbor did it to you. That's the first of the teachings. I know how I would feel if people started saying there were certain places you weren't allowed to put up a synagogue. And therefore, I know what should not be done to people who want to put up a cultural center, which will include a prayer space, not even exactly fully a mosque. The second teaching is from the very first president of the United States, in his first year of office, who wrote a synagogue in Newport, Rhode Island, saying, to bigotry, no sanction. To persecution, no assistance. And it makes perfect sense that the 44th President of the United States should echo that sentiment without the same words, should echo that sentiment in talking about the right of Muslims to create mosques where the local laws permit. And the third teaching is even more immediate. It's from my grandmother about 65 years ago, a little more. She was standing in line to buy meat at the kosher butcher shop in Baltimore, where I grew up. And two of the other Jewish women in the line started talking about the Schwarzes, the Yiddish word for the blacks. And they were talking nasty and contemptuous. And my grandmother interrupted them and said, "You can't talk that way. That's the way they talked about us in Europe. And this is America, and you can't talk that way in America." A teaching I never forgot. Well, the folks who are trying to prevent the building of mosques, not only the proposed Park 51 Cultural Center in Lower Manhattan, but mosques all around the United States. Those people, they can't act that way. This is America. To bigotry, no sanction. To persecution, no assistance. And indeed, although I think it's probably proper for the President of the United States to, as his oath says, to defend the Constitution and religious liberty under the Constitution, and probably not especially proper for him to express opinions about the wisdom of one or another religious community. That's not the job of the President. I, as a rabbi, as a Jew, as an American, as a human being, can say that from knowing the organizers of the Cordoba Initiative, I think that it's not only that they have a constitutional right, but it is that they are ethically right and profoundly wise. That it turns out that this was not the place, 2 blocks, 2 long, by the way, New York City blocks, behind very tall New York City buildings, away from ground zero. All this stuff about hallowed ground is absurd. But given the accident of history, which meant that they didn't get the land they originally sought on 23rd Street and ended up with this property, maybe accident and maybe providential, given that, I think for them to erect a beacon to the truth of an Islam that is committed to peace, the truth of an Islam that is committed to compassion, the truth of an Islam that carries on dialogue with Jews and Christians and Buddhists and Hindus and atheists, for them to erect that beacon against the violence, the hatred, the destruction of the mass murders that were perpetrated at the World Trade Center. To erect such a beacon is ethically right and profoundly wise.